So what if I told you that the best way to understand a secret society wasn't through its hidden rituals, but through its poetry? That's right. Today, we're diving into 6 centuries of Masonic verse to unlock the world of Freemasonry, one line at a time.
It's a great question, isn't it? I mean, it gets right to the heart of the whole paradox. Why would a private, kind of secret fraternity publish volumes of poetry for the whole world to see? It just seems to go against the grain. But, as we're about to find out, this poetry was never just for show. Oh no, it was a tool. It was part instruction manual, part moral code, and honestly, the very glue that held the whole Brotherhood together for centuries.
This little couplet from a modern collection, it just captures the essence perfectly. It takes the most recognizable Masonic symbols, the builder's tools, and flips them, showing you their real purpose. It's not about building structures, it's about building enlightened men. And that's the real magic of Masonic poetry. It turns simple, everyday tools into these profound guides for life.
And get this is no modern invention. We're talking about a tradition that stretches back over 600 years, starting with the actual stonemasons who are shaping Europe's great cathedrals. It's this incredible journey from simple worksite rhymes to sophisticated verse that was embraced by some of history's literary giants. It's really the story of how poetry became the true cornerstone of this global fraternity.
Okay, so how did words become just as important as stone? Well, in the beginning, it was all about practicality. Think about it. Long before printing presses, rhyming verse was like the original cloud storage. It was the easiest way to memorize and pass down the essential rules of the craft, making sure they got from master to apprentice perfectly intact.
This timeline shows a pretty amazing evolution. It all kicks off in 1390 with the Regius Poem, which was, for all intents and purposes, a rhyming employee handbook for stonemasons. But watch how it shifts. By the 1700s, it's not just about rules anymore, it's about official songs, right there in their first constitution. And then you fast forward to the 20th century, and poetry is even being used for humor. It wasn't just there, it adapted and grew with the fraternity every step of the way.
These rules from that very first poem are just incredible. They're not about secret handshakes, they're about paying people a fair wage, workplace safety, and how to resolve conflicts. This was the binding contract of a professional guild, and by putting it all into verse, they made sure every single member, whether they could read or not, had the code of conduct burned into their memory.
And here's where the big shift happens. As Freemasonry starts to be less about literally cutting stone and more about philosophy, the poetry evolves right along with it. It becomes the key that unlocks all the symbolism. A tool like the square and compass is no longer just for checking a stone. It's a metaphor for squaring your actions with virtue. Poetry basically became the translator, turning these abstract symbols into a practical guide for how to live a moral life.
So if poetry could teach the rules of the trade, could it teach something deeper? You bet. This is where we see Masonic verse really transform from a simple rule book into a moral compass, something designed to guide a member's entire life, not just their day job. If you read through centuries of this poetry, these 5 virtues just keep popping up over and over again. You can think of them as the pillars of a symbolic temple that each Mason was supposed to build inside himself. And the poems, they don't just list them out, they bring them to life with stories and allegories.
This quote from an 1823 Farmer's Almanac of all places just perfectly captures the goal of all those virtues. It's arguing that true morality isn't about following the rules because you're scared of getting in trouble. It's about developing an internal compass, something written in his heart that guides you to do the right thing almost instinctively.
And the poetry, it didn't pull any punches either. Just listen to this question it poses directly to its members. I mean, that's a direct challenge, isn't it? It forces you to look in the mirror and ask, am I contributing here or am I just taking up space? It's a great example of how poetry was used as a tool for self-reflection to keep the community's standards high.
But it wasn't all heavy philosophy and moral soul-searching. After the labor came the refreshment. And a huge and surprisingly funny part of the Masonic poetic tradition is all about celebrating the bonds of brotherhood that are forged over a good meal and a drink.
Masonic life was all about this really essential balance. On one side of the scale, you have the labor, the serious rituals and the learning. But on the other, you have the equally important refreshment, the social reward. The poetry even gives it these wonderfully cheeky names, like the knife and fork degree, celebrating the kind of fellowship that really only happens around a dinner table.
We just have to love the honesty of this, right? In a poem called The 630 Degree, a pretty clear nod to dinner time, the poet humorously admits that, yeah, lofty ideals are great, but a groaning banquet table is the real secret to getting people to show up. It's just this perfect, witty celebration of how fundamental breaking bread together really is for any community.
Here's another gem with that same kind of self-deprecating humor. It's a little wink to the member who might not remember all the complex rituals, but who is an undisputed champion of the knife and fork degree. It shows a real understanding that those social bonds, the simple act of fellowship, are just as vital as any of the formal work.
So this rich tradition of verse, from the practical to the profound to the downright playful, well, it didn't just stay within the lodge walls. It actually attracted some of literature's biggest names, creating this incredible legacy that cemented its place in cultural history.
I mean, we're not talking about some niche folk tradition here. The themes and the structure of Masonic poetry attracted literary giants from all over the world. Think about it. Germany's Goethe, Britain's Kipling, America's Pike, Argentina's Borges. The fact that these absolute masters of language explored Masonic ideas in their own work gave the entire tradition immense credibility. But here's a funny thing that happens when poems become this popular and beloved: their origins can get a little fuzzy. Two of the most famous Masonic poems are constantly attributed to giants like Pike or Kipling, but the truth? They were written by less famous but equally dedicated Masons. It's a powerful reminder that legendary words don't always come from legendary names. But Kipling did give us what might be the single most famous line in all of Masonic poetry. "We met upon the level, and we parted on the square." In just 10 words, it captures the entire philosophy. Inside the lodge, everyone is equal. They're on the level. And when you leave, you act with integrity towards everyone. You're on the square. It's just perfect. You know, when it comes right down to it, the power of Masonic poetry isn't just about Masons. It's about how any community uses language to build its own identity. The Masons used formal verse, but every family, every group of friends has its own kind of poetry. You know, the inside jokes, the stories that get told over and over, the traditions that define you as a group. It really makes you think, what are the words that hold your community together?